Purpose does the gentleman seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Will the clerk please distribute the amendment? Without objection, the reading of the amendment is dispensed with, and the gentleman is recognized for the purpose of explaining his amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to urge my colleagues to support my amendment to require the DoD-IG to submit a report about any political motivations that went into the decision to withdraw U.S. forces from Afghanistan. This amendment is not intended to be an attempt or a shot at President Biden and his administration. This amendment is about figuring out exactly what went wrong and ensuring that the United States never makes a catastrophic mistake like this again. As part of our oversight duties here on Armed Services Committee, we deserve to know what went wrong and if the decisions involved had anything to do with political motivations. The American people deserve to know. We have all heard from our constituents and seen what's been reported on the news. We keep hearing the administration talk about waiting to do an after-action report. It's time for the talk to be done. Let's do our proper oversight duty. Let's get to the bottom of this. And I believe this is a nonpartisan, common-sense amendment that can be supported by everyone in this room. For those reasons, I strongly urge my colleagues to support this amendment. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Well, I'm going to oppose this amendment and oppose it rather strongly. I can't speak to the intent, but I can absolutely speak to the effect. You know, to call into question people's political motivations is absolutely an attack on them. In this particular case, as I just alluded to a couple of minutes ago, it is completely and totally wrong. President Biden has had this opinion about Afghanistan for a very long time. His desire to get out of Afghanistan has been stated over and over and over again, and the notion that he was politically motivated to do it by some pressure other than what he honestly thought was the right policy is frankly offensive. You know, one of the big problems that we have in this job is we're constantly attacking each other outside of substance, outside of, no, like, here, I disagree with this. You know, and let me just say, by the way, parenthetically, this committee does a much better job of that. Your shot about Amazon in Seattle notwithstanding, by and large, we do a very good job on that, of focusing on the substance of the issue. Was this the right decision? Was it carried out correctly? Was it right? Was it wrong? Am I with them or am I not? But when you say that it was politically motivated, basically what it says is that the president, in this case, did something that he knew was wrong because he felt like politically he was pressured into doing it. And I'll tell you, I could go off on a very long rant here. Well, actually not that long. I got 38 seconds. But I will say the degree to which you denigrate politicians undermines the confidence in everything we do here. Whether you're Republican, Democrat, conservative, wherever you are, you get into office, you try to do something, everyone says that's just politics. And it undermines everything we try to do here. So for this committee to say we're going to question the political motivations of the president in making what was clearly a gut-wrenching policy decision, I adamantly oppose as taking us in a direction that this committee should not go. Mr. Gates.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thou doth protest a bit much on Amazon. I also oppose my colleague, Mr. Jackson's.
If the gentleman will yield,
no,
I think much more the spirit of just a
Mr. Chairman, I would very much like to
do
what you have suggested and substantively respond to my colleague's amendment, and I join you in opposing it, actually, because I don't think the Inspector General's office is equipped to assess political motivations. And to the extent that anyone would be, every decision to go to or leave a war is inherently political. War is inherently political. So this would be seemingly a waste of time. I've probably been the Republican on this committee who has most strongly supported President Biden's decision to leave Afghanistan. I think it was the right decision. The wrong decision was relying on the Afghan government to be in any way capable to maintain our equipment, to keep our equipment, to ensure safe departure of Americans or SIVs, and to deploy the American cash that we left there, both in accounts and in currency, for the benefit of the Afghan people, rather than merely running out of the country like a bunch of bandits with whatever they could steal. I don't think that requires an assessment of President Biden's political motivations. President Biden has said as vice president, as a candidate, that he wanted to end this war. President Trump wanted to end this war. I think there are plenty of ways to do after-action analysis like the Crow Amendment does, but it's just my opinion, having read a great deal of Inspector General reports during my time in Congress, that is not well suited for that office. And I would yield my remaining 30 seconds to the chairman to respond to what he perceives as an ad hominem.
That's fine. Not worth it. I was just kind of kidding. Not a serious point there. Does anyone else seek time on this amendment?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Khanna is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I share your offense by this Republican amendment. I mean, this Republican amendment, let's just see what it says. It says that we should have the Inspector General investigate President Biden for making the decision to end the war in Afghanistan. And what is the president's sin? That he made a democratic judgment of listening to the majority of the people. The amendment says that he shouldn't do that. How dare he? How dare he disregard the foreign policy elite and actually make a political judgment to listen to people? How dare he disregard all the talking heads who've been on cable news, ubiquitous the last 2 weeks, who have been responsible for a lot of the failure in Afghanistan? How dare he make a decision that he doesn't want to send more men and women in harm's way in Afghanistan? You know why people are upset at the president, the real elite, why they're upset at him? Because he cares more about what people think in Scranton than he does about the failed think tanks, the failed commissions, the failed task forces that this town has set up for 20 years. You know what we need to have an Inspector General investigate? Why is it that expert after expert came up to the Congress and said that the Afghan army was strong, that the Afghan army was going to win, when every journalist knew in Afghanistan that the Afghan army couldn't fight their way out of a paper bag, that the Ghani government was corrupt, that they had no legitimate support? That's what we need to investigate. Why is it that our experts were so wrong? That is the lesson. So to say that the president is wrong for having a democratic judgment and listening to the American people is absolutely the wrong lesson. What we ought to be investigating is why our experts and the foreign policy blob made such disastrous decisions for 20 years. I yield back my time.
Does anyone else seek time? Mr. Kelly.
Mr. Chairman, I yield my time to Mr. Jackson.
Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, I understand that some of the Democrats on this committee may be offended by this, but I'll be honest with you, my constituents and a large number of people in this country want answers to what happened. This is not just about the decision to withdraw from Afghanistan. I know that President Biden had been planning that for a long time. This is about the other issues surrounding it. Why was September the 11th picked as the date for withdrawal? A lot of people believe that was a totally politically motivated decision, and then it was changed after there was political backlash to August the 31st. And I think that the issue here is not getting out of Afghanistan for me. The issue is about how we did that and the decisions that went into that. And I do believe, as many people in this country do, that that was a politically motivated decision. And I think it's time for us to figure out exactly what went wrong and to bury our heads in the sand and ignore it and play like this is just partisan politics is a disservice to this country. And it is this committee's job to figure that out. And Mr. Gates may be right. It may not be the DODIG that's best for doing this, but somebody needs to do this, and we need the answers to this question. Thank you. I yield back.
Does anyone else seek recognition on this amendment? Hearing none, the question occurs on the amendment. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those opposed will say no. No. Opinion of the chair, the noes have it. Noes have it, the amendment is defeated. It is now in order to consider log number 909 by Mr. Waltz. For what purpose does the gentleman seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Will the clerk please distribute the amendment? Without objection, the reading of the amendment is dispensed with, and the